Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of Linguabees. Today we have a very special episode because we are going to talk about something that we are passionate about. So, we are going to talk about our research. We are here with Yesenia, Daniel, Noemi, Marlene, and me, Brisa. How is everything going, guys?
Hi, Brisa. Thank you so much for the introduction. Well, right now we are very excited for the next semester. We're very happy.
Yes, I am also very happy to be here in the podcast to share all my ideas, to share everything about what we've been doing on our research. So I'm very excited to be here with you.
The same with me. Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here with you and excited as well for all the progress.
Hi everyone. Well, I'm also very happy to be here. I'm glad that we had the possibility to join again, and let's do it.
Okay, very good. Thank you for introducing yourself. So we can start. I was wondering if each of you can share a little bit about your background as an English teacher. So, Yesenia, would you like to start?
Sure. Okay, so let me share a little bit about my background. So when I finished high school, I was looking for what degree. I was looking for a degree. So I was like thinking, okay, what do I want to do? That big question that everyone has. So then I saw that in Guanajuato, in the Universidad of Guanajuato, they had the English teaching career. So I decided to apply. And when I began in first semester, I learned a lot about the theory and the practice. And then in that moment, I started teaching when I was in first semester. So I've been teaching since 2017. I've taught all grades. I have been working with kindergarten, elementary school, middle school, high school, and now currently I am teaching in university level. So I am very happy. I like all the grades. I enjoy teaching from children to adults, young adults. So once I started teaching in university level, I identified that there was still some areas of opportunity that I had. So this is when I looked at different master degree programs. And since I live in the city of Guanajuato, I was like, okay, so there's program here in the city where I live. So let me apply. So then I applied, and then for this reason, I am now here because I'm always very thrilled to learn more about English teaching, and I really enjoy it. I really like it. So this is quite of my story, a little bit of my story. So yes.
Thank you for sharing, Yesenia. That's very interesting because you have now experience in all the levels, and I think that that's a good like idea for future teachers, right? Uh, Noemi, can you please share something about your background as an English teacher?
Well, I started as many English teachers. I first learned English, then I lived in the States. And when I came back, I was offered to give some lessons in English. At the beginning, I didn't want to, but eventually, since I was offered more classes, more hours in front of the group, I kept going, and I discovered that I liked it. Most of my experiences with children, I've tried with teenagers and university students, but I think that my passion is working with children. I didn't find very exciting to work with adults. But once I discovered this, I first did my TKT because I thought that was enough. But with experience, I discovered that no, that I needed more. And then I went for the career, for the bachelor's. I obtained my bachelor's in English teaching. And then I wanted more. That's why I'm doing this master's.
Okay, thank you for sharing. You also mentioned that you don't like working with adults, and I think that a part of working with all the levels, it's important because that way you can discover what do you like, right? Daniel, can you please share something about your background as an English teacher?
Yeah, unlike you, I'm like a little bit different from all of you guys, like because I studied something very different from what I'm studying right now. Even though I'm studying a master's in languages, I actually studied a bachelor's degree in engineering. So I'm an engineer. I'm a mechatronics engineer. But I realized that ever since I was a kid, I liked languages, even though I didn't realize about that. The subjects that I liked the most when I was studying my engineering was English and French. So then I started to look for a job where I could use those languages. I just typed the word French on CompuTrabajo, which is a job platform. And then I fell into the job because the only vacancies that I found was as a language teacher. I actually wanted to be a French teacher because I was very, very passionate about French. When I was learning that, it was like, man, I really enjoy this. This is my favorite part of the day when I was learning French, and I got this like role model from different teachers where I've been working as an English teacher, as a French teacher, and now for a few years I also started working as a German teacher. So this is something that I'm very passionate about. I really like when my students learn, and now I'm studying the master's in linguistics, and I'm very excited about it because this is my passion. I discovered that I really like languages. I love speaking different languages, and I love learning and teaching them. So I just wanted to share my knowledge as well as my passion for languages to other people so they can also feel encouraged and that everybody can learn. And that's a little bit about my story. Well, it's also important to mention that I also worked in France as a Spanish teacher. I think that's also another very important part of my story because having an experience abroad in a country where you don't know anybody and you have to speak another language. And, and I mean, to be honest, like one of my favorite languages, which is French, and teaching your mother tongue is also a challenge. So, well, yes, that's pretty much my experience. Thank you for asking.
Thanks for sharing, Daniel. And finally, Marlene, can you please share something about your background as an English teacher?
Yes. Well, I have a BA in Spanish as a second language. Then, when I finished the university, I noticed that here in Mexico, working as a Spanish teacher, it was a little bit difficult because you are not only teaching Spanish, you have to teach like many subjects as history and maths and all of that. So I didn't want to be working like that. So I decided to take advantage of my second language, which is English. And I decided to start working as an English teacher. I did the same as Noemi mentioned it. I did these certifications to be an English teacher, but then I noticed that it was not enough. I was teaching children and then I decided to start moving forward to university. And I noticed that one of the requirements is to have a master. So I decided to do a master, but in this case, I wanted to be more focused on English because I want something related with English. And then I decided to start this master here in the University of Guanajuato because it focuses in English teaching.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for sharing, Marlene. Okay, now, before we go deeper, how about if each of us share a few words about our research topic? Then we will go into more detail about this. So, Yesenia, would you like to start, please?
Sure. Okay, so my research explores English language teaching practices. Um, so I identified that there's a lot of research being done on students, how students learn, what motivates them, but there is a little bit known about teachers, about their own process. So I focus on the teacher identity and how this influences the decision making in the classroom. The main goal of my research is to identify the key aspects of teacher identity and how this shapes the pedagogical decisions and the practices. So, teachers, how they are influenced and how they decide their methods, their motivations, and their professional choices. So I am studying this aspect. I'm looking at the teacher identity, and I am very grateful to share a little bit more beyond during the podcast so you can know a little bit more of what I am doing.
Okay, that's very interesting, Yesenia. Thank you. Daniel, please, can you share something about your research topic?
Yes, thank you, Brisa. Well, as I told you before, since I'm an engineer, I'd like to practice or to research something that is related with both languages and numbers. So I wanted to do something that was more where I could compare numbers, but these numbers came out from knowledge and learning, right? So my research is basically comparing different methodologies of teaching because I've been very focused on finding what are the best or like better methodologies in order to teach and how they can make this process more efficient. I mean, the process of learning more efficient. And that's why I wanted to compare spaced repetition, which is a technique that I have used myself a lot in order to learn languages and other stuff, against other methodologies that teachers use here in Mexico. And let's see which of these methodologies is better. So basically, that's what I'm researching.
Okay, thank you, Daniel, for sharing. Noemi, please, can you go next?
Sure. In my case, I am working with gamification. Since I've been working with children, we often hear about innovation and bringing exciting activities to your class. And part of the research that I'm doing is to see how are other English teachers living this. Because in theory, and with all this technology and after the pandemics, how we have been bombed with all these ideas and to see how is it in reality, how are they living it.
Okay, thank you, Noemi. Finally, Marlene.
Thank you, Brisa. Well, my research topic it's about language use. I'm looking for to understand what is the decisions that teachers are taking into account when they are teaching English, and focusing more in how they use the language of the mother tongue and the target language. So I would like to know if there are more reasons beyond the decisions that the institutions already have, because most institutions here in Mexico have the rule that only English, but sometimes in the practice it could be a little bit different. And I would like to know also, Brisa, what about you?
Okay, in my case, I am working on exploring what are the perspectives of English teachers about the implementation of a policy that we have in bilingual private institutions here in Mexico, especially in one institution in central Mexico. My purpose is to look at what are the perspectives that these teachers have on the implementation of the policy because, well, I have been working in private schools. I also studied at a private school when I was in middle school and high school, and I was able to observe how teachers are asked to implement this policy in this type of schools. And sometimes for us as a teacher is a difficult task, and institutions and principals and coordinators don't give us like the preparation to implement this kind of policy. We are just like say that you have to speak English to students, and students also have to speak English to you, and you have to promote the use of the language inside the class, but we don't have like the strategy, so we have to do our best to do this activity in the class. So that's why I'm going to study in my research topic. So now I think that all the ideas that we share are like very interesting. And this lead me to ask you a question. So I'm going to ask each of you the same questions. So how did the idea of your research topic came about? So it was always the same, or do you have been changing your idea about the research topic that you will follow, the line that you will follow in your research? So, Marlene, can you please start answering this part?
Yes, Brisa. Well, in my case, it has been a journey. I have no idea. At the beginning of the semester, it was for me very difficult to find which topic, it would be really interesting for me, because something that the teachers have told us about it is that this topic, we are gonna be married during 2 years, so it has to be something that you really are interested in or you feel in love of that topic. And for me, it's very difficult to find something that I really love, because I love many topics, and so it was a little bit difficult. At the beginning, I choose something with language attrition, that is when you are losing or you are not remember all your language. And then I decided to change to AI, because it was something that was kind of recent. But then I decided to start working more with something with the language. I noticed that as a Spanish teacher, I have some things that are pretty similar when you are teaching English. So I decided to do something that could be very practical in my teaching, not only as an English teacher, also as a Spanish teacher. Because when I'm working as a Spanish teacher, I notice that I can use all my linguistic resources, even though if I know some words in French, or if I know some words in, I don't know, in Japanese, I can use, it's not seen as a bad thing, it's seen as a good thing when you are able to use all the resources that you have. But also, I noticed that when we are teaching English, specifically here in Mexico, because this is my context, there is like a lot of rules when you need to use your resources. If you are speaking in Spanish, for example, in a class that is only for English, can be something really bad. So I think that this topic, it can be very interesting, and how depending of the context we use the language, and how depending of the context we have these guidelines. So I want to understand all of that, and I want to take into account my two teaching contexts, that is Spanish and English.
Okay, that's very interesting, Marlene. So we can observe that your research topic has been changing a lot. Now, what about you, Noemi? Did you always know what you want to do research about?
Well, in my case, yes, I had the clear idea since the beginning because, as I mentioned, when I started learning about different strategies, I also started sharing with other teachers what they were doing. I started looking for ideas, and then I realized that for many teachers it was difficult. So I wanted to know how was it for them. And when I started looking for this applied linguistics, I found that there are different ways to teach English. For some people who is not in the educational field, they think that being a teacher is like a calling, like some mystical ability that people has. And when teachers are not fulfilling those expectations, they are sometimes treated like they are not good teachers. But part of my research is to dig into why are they not doing these strategies? What is limiting them? And I discovered that there are many limitations. It's not that the English teachers don't want to implement the strategies, or it's not that they are lazy, it's not that they are not even understanding what to do. It's because the system is difficult for them. When I presented my research proposal, at the beginning, I wanted somehow to prove that it was possible, that it was attainable, that everybody can do gamification and everyone could be benefit about it. But the more I looked for and the more teachers I interview, I realized that no, not really. It's not for everyone, and it's not something that everyone can do. It's difficult. It's rewarding as a student when you have a teacher that is gamifying your classes, you will be benefit. But as a teacher, it's difficult, and sometimes you have to look for other things, or you have to prioritize other things in your classes instead of just having your students engaged. And that's a difficult finding for me.
Yes, Noemi, yes. I think that this process was difficult for everyone, and that during this process we have like some challenges that we face. In my case, as I learned English in a bilingual school, I think that for me, becoming an English teacher and working in the same type of schools that I learned English was something like very interesting because I was able to understand my teachers. I remember some of my experience as a student, and I remember my teachers telling me that I have to speak English and correcting me, and also they speaking to me in English outside the classrooms. And as an English teacher, I understand that it was part of a policy. It was not because they want or because they feel better speaking English. It was part of the rules of the school. So I think that it is very interesting, and that's why I decided to go in this line. Because for me, it is interesting how we teachers perceive that policy because we implement it and we have to find the strategies to use only English or also to correct students who speak Spanish or to make them feel interest in the language so they can use the language in the class. So I think that's why I decided to go in this line. It was always the same in my case. I want to go in this line, but I have like some doubts about if it was about the policy or if it was about language use. So my idea has been changing. And also at the beginning, I was like focusing more on the students' perspectives. And at the end, I go with the teachers' perspectives. So yes, I think that for all of us, our research topic has been changing a lot during the master program. What about you, Daniel? Can you please share about your research topic and if it was always the same idea or if it has been changing?
Cambridge, thanks for asking. Well, yes, as with all of you guys, my research has also been changing, but unlike you, I think that I have had like a very, very concrete idea from the beginning, which was like to find a methodology that was better in order to teach. So not the best methodology because these kind of things don't exist. Like what is the best methodology there? Because this is actually something related to my background because I've been working in different schools and all of them tell you like we have the best methodology and you're like why is it the best methodology? What makes it better? So what I really wanted to find is something that was actually comparing different types of teaching and knowing that none of them is going to be the best. It's going to depend a lot on the context. I wanted to do that just to compare different things in order to apply that not only in my teaching but also in my learning, right? So I was looking into different kinds of methodologies. I was very interested in music because I love music. I learned a lot of vocabulary through music. Actually, I remember back in the day when I was like 12 years old studying songs in English, and that's how I learned a lot of vocabulary, like using Google Translate, translating word by word, because if you put two words in Google Translate, it was a mess. So it was like I remember back in the day, I was with my notebook writing down all the words that I didn't know because I really wanted to know what they said. And then as I started going further, I started to use more like series and movies in English. And I used to do the same, but I realized that I followed certain patterns and I wanted to see which of these patterns that I used with myself in order to learn English, French, or German. How can I do that with my students? So I wanted to work with movies, and then I wanted to work with music, and then I wanted to work with what is called spaced repetition, and then I wanted to work with different like drillings. So yes, it was a mess at the beginning. I didn't know what I wanted to do because there were so many variables that I wanted to take into consideration. But at the end of the day, I decided that I was gonna stay with the basics because if you want to have like a very big scope and encompass a lot of things, your work or your final work is not going to have a lot of quality. So I decided to sacrifice quantity for quality. That's how it's been shaping my research.
Okay, thanks for sharing, Daniel. Now, Yesenia, how did your idea about your research topic come about? It was always the same or it changed during the master degree?
Okay. Well, the idea, it originated from my interest in English teaching and from observing how teachers make very different pedagogical decisions, even when they're working in similar contexts. So I was very interested in this, in knowing more about their beliefs, uh, their experiences, and self perceptions. So this is an area that I am exploring, and how these self perceptions seem to influence the decision making in the classroom. So from there, I began to explore the literature on teacher identity and noticed that although there are many theoretical studies, there is still no connection between what the theory says and what actually goes in the practice, especially in the Mexican context. So this is where I started, or this is where my research topic emerged and where I became interested in because I identified these aspects. There is still a connection missing between what theory tells us about teacher identity and what actually goes in the practices. As you all have mentioned, I think this is something we all have in common, why we are very interested in these topics, why they don't occur in the Mexican context, what is going on. So this is something that we all are able to identify. Theory tells us a lot, but what actually happens? Do English teachers actually have those possibilities in the Mexican context? Why or why not? So this is what we are doing. This is what we are exploring.
Okay, thanks, Yesenia, for sharing. I think that selecting the topic was a difficult challenge, but now what about the methodological part? I think that this is something that all of us we have been struggle with. So I'm going to ask you some questions. So how did you decide on the methodological approach you are using, Daniel? This is a question for Daniel first.
Well, thank you for asking, Brisa. And well, since I already told you, I've been searching for about different kinds of teaching and to see which one works better. So I didn't mention that, but I am aiming specifically into the vocabulary retention. Okay, so a little bit with how memory can be or how memorization can be improved. So, in a nutshell, it's kind of how many words people remember depending on what kind of teaching they have. So, this directly aims into quantitative methodology. And yes, like there's no other option for that because I'm going to be working with numbers. And basically, that's how I'm going to work. Also, it also has to do with my background because I studied an engineering and I feel very comfortable working with that. And I also wanted to take advantage, yes, to seize my knowledge in engineering so that I can have like a better work with a better quality.
Okay, thank you, Daniel, for sharing. What about you, Yesenia? How did you make this decision about the method that you will use in your research?
Yes. Well, as you mentioned, the first challenge was to decide the topic, and then the second great challenge was to decide the methodological approach. So, in my case, the methodological approach was chosen based on the study's objectives. So first, it was like what I want to study, and depending on its objectives, I decided or I aimed to deeply explore how teachers perceive their identity and how this influences their practices. So I opted for a qualitative approach. In my case, the tools that I am using is a demographic questionnaire, a semi-structured interview, and a narrative frame analysis. Through this method, it allows to capture the stories of five English teachers from the University of Guanajuato, and they provide deep insights about their personal beliefs, emotions, and professional trajectories that have shaped their teaching. Because I shared with them that this is a space where they are able to share what they have lived and where their voices are heard. Many times they mentioned that they would feel that they were not heard, that no one would listen. So, this is the space that we had for them to share their stories. So this study suggests giving great attention to the teacher identity within institutional context and look at a more reflective and effective teaching. For this reason, I am doing a qualitative approach, and this is how I decided on my tools or my instruments that I would be using.
Thanks, Yesenia. Okay, now what about you, Noemi? How did you decide what method you will use during this process?
For me, that was the difficult part because at the beginning, or I've been looking for phenomenology because I wanted to hear about the experiences, how they lived, how they implement the gamification. But the more I explored explored, the more I learned, I discovered that every teacher has a different process. Every teacher acquired the knowledge on gamification in a different way. Some of them went through courses, some of them found on internet, some of them were doing it without not knowing. They were just trying new things in their classes. And so I went from phenomenology to some narrative inquiry, but since the narratives were so different, and at the beginning I wanted to share with other teachers what were the difficulties, because at the end I wanted to know about the experiences, if it was good or not, or if it was something attainable, something that they can implement. That's why I went for phenomenology, to give um, the experiences as they were, and to allow other teachers to identify what could they find whenever they try to do or to implement gamification. So I think this qualitative study, the same as Yesenia, it was a way to give the teachers the voice, because most of the research that I found on the field of gamification was about the students. Most of the research that I found was on if worked, if it was good for grammar, if it was good for morphology, but it was not about how teachers and all the work they had to do behind even one activity, how much was it for them regarding budget, regarding time, regarding facilities, or their principals, if they were allowed to even make noise inside the classrooms. The same in the Mexican context in public education. They were facing different things. That's why I prefer to do this phenomenology study.
Okay, thanks, Noemi. I think that you mentioned something very interesting. That is that most of the studies, or a lot of studies, focus on students' perspectives rather than in the teacher perspective. That's why I decide to look at teachers' perspectives. So my study is a case study. It is a qualitative research also. It is a case study because I'm focusing on a specific situation that is happening at specific school. So that's why it is a case. And the instruments that I'm going to use are a demographic questionnaire as Yesenia, and a semi-structured interview as Yesenia, but I'm going to also use an observation. I'm going to use three instruments because of the triangulation, because sometimes in the interviews we can receive like false information, like for example, to implement the policy, I do this, and that, but maybe in the classroom they are not doing that and they are doing a different thing. So that's why I am going to use observations to do so. Finally, Marlene, can you please share how do you decide which method you will use during this research?
Yes. Well, I decided that the qualitative approach it will be like the best option for me because I wanted to understand the different perspectives about language use regarding to the teachers. So I decided that this qualitative approach it could be very helpful for me to understand in depth what are the decisions when they are using the language and also how they are using, depending of the context, the language. Also, I'm gonna use a case study as my research design because I think that this is going to allow me to explore or to examine the language used in the L2 classrooms and within a specific context and gain in detail understanding how teachers and learners are interacting in the classroom regarding to the use of the language.
Okay, thank you, Marlene. I think that for you, this process has been difficult, right? Selecting the topic, then decided what method you will use. So now, what have you learned about yourself during this thesis process?
Well, it's not difficult to explain because I know where are the things that I don't want, but when I need to choose the things that I want, it's difficult for me. That it's something that I have to deal with this in every stage of my life. So I'm getting used to when I'm not selecting the decision in a short time because I take time. I like to take my time. I like to read a lot. I like to do research and to understand what is the purpose if I do this or if I do the other. So, in the case to selecting this research topic, it has been really interesting for me because I have been learning that I'm really good doing research. Even though when the topics were a little bit difficult for me to select, I was really glad. I enjoyed the process because I was learning a lot about like the language attrition, about AI, and now about the language use. So for me, it was like a really interesting topic to know more about the things that I like and the things that I don't like. It is not easy to select a topic because again, as I mentioned it before, there is like a lot of information that we can do. There is like a lot of things that we can work on it, and there is a lot of that we as a teacher are really interesting. So it's very difficult, like in a short time, you need to select something. Because before to start the MA, I was not thinking into do. I know that maybe they will ask me for a thesis, but I was not thinking that I have to select now my research topic. I was expecting that first the subjects, first know more about the things that we would like to know, and then select the subject. So I think that in that case, first you need to select the topic and then you need to do the research. So it was like a little bit confusing for me that part. But yeah, I think that I learned to be patient, I learned to be tolerant, and I learned to do research in more independent way. Mhm.
Okay, that's very interesting. And Marlene, how do you deal with the balance between your responsibilities and your personal life?
That's a tough question, and I have to be honest with everybody. For me, well, as you already know, I am mother. I am a mother. I have a little baby. So for me, it has been very difficult, but something that really helps me is to be very disciplined, to have a schedule. I become more aware of the things that I have to be very organized. I have to be every week to have like the things that I have to do, the things that I have to deliver. And that is something that it has been helped me a lot, like to have a balance between the things that I have to do and the things that I have to do on my thesis. And also to take some day offs. For example, we work on classes Friday and Saturday, and I take a day off from Sunday and Monday, and I start working again on the thesis, well, on the master starting Tuesday. So when I'm taking these day offs, I turn off my notifications. So I decided to not be working on that because I think that my brain needs space to relax and to process information and to start again.
Okay, thank you, Marlene. You mentioned some interesting things. Now, Noemi, what have you learned about yourself during this thesis process?
Well, in my case, I think that what I learned about myself, the same as Marlene, I learned about to be patient. I learned that it's better, like in my case, due to my method, which is phenomenology, I learned a lot about more listening and less speaking, because everybody has a story to share. And the way we look at others' stories teach us about ourselves, about how we build our ideas. The same happened to me. As I mentioned, I had this big idea on what was gamification and what, like, all the things that could be possible. And then sitting down, being quiet and listening to all these people saying it's difficult, I don't have money to do this, I don't have internet. It made me realize that there are different realities in this world, in this context. And it made me ponder more on what privileges I was taking for granted And now I value those privileges, I acknowledge those privileges, and I try to use those privileges to help other people. I think that's the thing that I learned about myself, that I could be more aware of others than just not working or looking for myself.
And also, I think that this podcast helps to that process of learning about other people and other experiences, and even listening to students from the master from other semesters, right? Noemi, how do you balance research with other responsibilities and with your personal life?
The same. It's difficult. It's something that also is part of the process to have a schedule. The same. I had to learn to have a schedule, to be disciplined, to say, no, I need to read, and I will be sitting down until I finish this reading. In my case, I'm also a mom. I think at the end of the day, this master's has been built by all my family, my supportive husband, my kids, even when they help me, like right now, instead of having the TV on and making noise around the house, they are all quiet in the rooms because they know mom is recording. And I think it helps me to balance. Something that my classmates mention is that I am not just a student. That is not the only role that I play in my life. We're more than students. And I think that keeps me mentally sane, to know that, okay, I have a schedule from 8 to 12. I am a student and I will be doing my 100%. But after 3 p.m., I am a mom, and I take my kids to soccer and I read with them. So I think having a proportion, having knowledge of what roles I am playing in every different hour, it's what keeps me balanced.
Thank you, Naomi, for sharing. Now, Yesenia, what about you? What have you learned about yourself during this process?
Okay, this is a good question. I've learned to be more persistent and patient because research doesn't always have a linear way. So it's not a linear process. And new questions often arise and they may shift the direction. But this doesn't mean that your research is wrong or that you are doing something wrong. No, this is part of the process. So I have been strengthening my skills in critical analysis and active listening during the interviews, for example. So also to be a listener and know what other teachers want to share. So this is something that I have learned about myself during this process.
Okay, and how do you balance your personal life with your responsibilities as a researcher?
Okay, well, I've learned to manage my time in a realistic way because sometimes we want to do so much in just 24 hours that a day has. So it's not possible. It's not realistic. So I've learned to do that. I've learned to be realistic in my scheduling, um, and setting achievable goals because sometimes we want to reach so much in so little time that it's not possible. As I have mentioned before, it's part of a process, and sometimes we want to jump those steps in the process. And the process, it makes you go back. Even if you want to jump, if you want to go some steps ahead, it makes you return. So I've learned to do it. And it's also been important to recognize when I need to take a break, when I need to stop and look at my research from a different point of view. So sometimes I need to make myself stop because we don't stop. We keep going and going and always. So this is something that I have been doing to balance my responsibilities. So I recognize this in both my academic and personal life. And I try to be consistent, even if this process is a little bit slower, just to keep it going. And make it I do work on it every day. I am consistent, but to not try to just jump some steps in the process.
Yes, and I think that something important is that all of us we have different things to do, right? we are very busy, and we are students, we are teachers, we some of us, you are mothers. And for example, in your case, I think that you live alone, right? So if you live alone, you have to cook, you have to clean, you have to do a lot of things. So yes, I think that is very difficult. In my case, what I have learned about myself is that I can do more than I was thinking on. Because, for example, last year I was just teaching, and for me, it was like a lot of work. And this semester, I was working and studying at the same time. And I discovered that just working was not like a lot of work, because right now I have more work. So, yes, I think that I learn a lot about what things I am capable of doing. And I balance my responsibilities with my personal life by having a schedule, as you mentioned, and being very disciplined and organized. I think that we all need organization, because sometimes, as you mentioned, we have to do a lot of things, and we want to do all the things at the same time, and we have to make an organization to complete all the tasks that we have. And finally, Daniel, what have you learned about yourself during this thesis process?
Well, I've also learned that I can do a lot of things because, that's something that I've loved, that sometimes you don't seize your potential as much as you could, but at the same time, well, it's like ambivalent opinion because on one side, I feel like I can do a lot of things that I wasn't aware about, but at the same time, I feel like one song in Spanish says, which goes like, la verdad es que no soy tan fuerte como lo pensaba. Because, like, I'm not as strong as I used to think. Because there are some things that have put me down, really down, during this process. And this is like a roller coaster, like ups and downs. And sometimes I feel like I can do a lot of things because of some things that I have been able to do, but at the same time, I felt lost in some occasions. So yeah, that's what I've learned about myself.
Okay, thanks for sharing, Daniel. Now, how you said that it was a difficult process. So, how do you balance your personal life with all the responsibilities that you have as a researcher?
Well, as you might know, at the beginning, I was working in three jobs. I mean, I was working in two different schools, but also I was giving classes by myself and sometimes driving as an Uber driver and as an entrepreneur. And at the same time, studying another master's. Man, it was like a lot. It was a lot. So I had to drop some classes in order to give the focus that it really deserves. Yeah, what the master deserves. So that's what I had to do, and I had to quit some activities, and that was really painful for me because one of the things that I love doing is going to the gym, and actually I wasn't taking care of my health. Actually, like some weeks ago, I realized that my blood pressure was high. And actually, I think all of us have been through these health issues related to stress. Because I also had like some pain in my stomach, as well as you, Brisa and Marlene. I don't know about you guys, Rami and Yesenia, but this stress transforms into real problems, real health problems. So, what you really need to do is, or what we really need to do is to have very well defined what we want to achieve, but also taking into account ourselves. Yes. So to be honest, to answer your question, I didn't keep a balance between my life and the masters. I didn't keep any balance because the question was like, how do you keep the balance? I didn't keep any balance. I was focusing only on studying and working, and then that didn't have like a very good result. So now I just decided to, I know that I was trying to bite off more than I could chew. So I decided to drop some activities, and then actually to start this next semester, I am really considering to drop more classes in order to have time to exercise, because that's health is something very important that we need to consider.
Yes, I think that this topic will be a very good topic for a future episode because, well, our generation, Daniel, Marlene, and me, we are from the 11th generation and we have been talking a lot. And all of us, we have been living like a bad life, talking about health because we have been going to the OXXO a lot and we have been eating a lot during classes. And yes, we don't have time to do exercise. So, yes, for next semester, we have to start taking care of ourselves. Now, we are doing research and we are studying a master degree. And I think that the purpose of this is to make research, and this research is going to have a practical application. Our findings are going to help someone or also us for the teaching practices. So, Daniel, is there any practical application of your findings that you would like to see in the future?
Yes, of course. Actually, since as I told you from the beginning, this research that I am doing is very related to my context with which I've been learning and the things that I've been using in order to teach. So I really want to find different and better ways to have a better teaching performance, and so that my students can learn in a better way and I can have a better idea of what things work better than other things.
Okay, that's interesting. Thank you. What about you, Yesenia? What will be the practical implications of your findings?
Okay, well, I'd like that the results contribute for teaching training programs, helping future teachers to reflect on their professional identity from early stages. I have identified that there's many problems that could be seen before and they could be prevented, and we could be trained for that, but we don't notice or we are not aware of it until we go into the classroom. This is when you face reality. This is when you really identify how all the theory that you have seen in class, how it really works inside the classroom. So I would love to contribute to this to help teachers be prepared, really prepared for when they come in, and that they could be prevented from many feelings, many mistakes that they can have in the classroom that sometimes makes them quit teaching. I do know of many teachers that have faced problems that are so big that they didn't know about any of this, and they're like, okay, if I knew that, I would have continued teaching, but I didn't know, so this is when I quit. So there's some problems, not all, but some problems could be prevented in early stages once teacher understand their identity. Because sometimes you try to just fit in. You think a certain way, but since the school has policy, since the school works a certain way, you just try to fit in, and you try to just be quiet in the process and not share what you actually think, what you actually believe, how you think things should be done inside your classroom. I think of me in my early stages and when I was a novice teacher when I began in my first 2 years, how I would just follow rules. And now I don't. I'm like, okay, well, this is how it has to be done. Because many times we have coordinators that do not have bachelor's degree in English teaching and they tell you how to teach. And sometimes it's because we don't know enough about our identity. And sometimes we have to make these beliefs very strong, very, very strong to make our voice be heard and make others understand what we're trying to do in our classroom. So understanding how this identity influences in the pedagogical decisions could lead to more intentional and effective classroom practices.
Thanks, Yesenia. I think that your research is like something very interesting because it's one thing that I am going through. I have quit a job just because of this reason. My coordinator is not an English teacher, and I have been experiencing a lot of difficult things talking about my identity and following the rules that they have. So I have decided to quit that job because it was like enough for me and it was not like aligned with my beliefs. So yes, I think that is something very interesting that will help to coordinators, to institutions, to teachers, and to a lot of people. Thank you. Now, what about you, Noemi? Is there any practical implication of your findings for the future?
Sure. Well, initially, my thesis, my topic was targeted specifically to teachers. As I mentioned, to those teachers, it was straight to those teachers who wanted to implement gamification for them to know, right? Because sometimes we try strategies and we don't really know what are we facing. It was for them to know that it works, but it will be difficult and they will find limitations. And it doesn't mean that they wouldn't try, because at the end of the day, we have agency. The same as teachers, we have the decision to say, I want to implement this, although I know it's difficult. I know that I don't have, but I want to try it. At the end, I want to tell them that if they want to try it, they can do it and they will achieve great things, but they need to know. And eventually, I think some of the implications that it might have is also a calling for the people in charge, for the people that is preparing teachers, for instance, to include these kind of strategies in their BA programs, in their diplomates, for them to know that it's not just about mentioning and just telling, okay, gamification exists. No, to tell them, like, what is it about? Not just entertaining the kids. And also, I think it's also for society, for them to know that if teachers are not trying, or if they are trying innovative strategies, it takes time. It's not magical. It doesn't happen just because someday came to your mind. You might have talent teaching, but there is a process and there is a long process behind each teacher. All those teachers that they see on Pinterest, on TikTok, on Facebook, they have a process behind and they just record the nice things that happen at the end, but it also takes time. So I think it's for the three elements: for community, for institutions, and for teachers.
Thanks, Noemi. Now, in my case, I think that the practical implication that my research will have is first for the schools, the private schools, because as Yesenia mentioned, sometimes we have coordinators that are not English teachers and they tell you, okay, you have to do this, and that's it. And they don't have any idea of what teachers deal with inside the class. So I think that what we do in the class is something really difficult, and we have to look for strategies. We have to do different things. So I think that it's a good idea to give schools like some feedback about teachers so they can look at the other side of the coin and they can have like more information and they can train the teachers to implement, in this case, or in my case, this English only policy. Not just telling them you have to implement the policy and that's it, but telling them this is what you have to do and you can do this to develop this activity. Because in that school we are observed, and in our feedback we sometimes receive feedback like you don't follow the policy and that's it. But the coordinator doesn't tell us like, okay, in this part you can maybe do or follow this strategy instead of just switching to Spanish to respect the policy. So I think that in my case that will be the implication. What about you, Marlene? What would be the future implication that your findings will have?
Well, yes, Brisa, I think that in this research, one of the future contributions that it can help is to improve the teaching understanding and how the teachers are using the language in the L2 classrooms. I think that teachers as already Naomi and as already Yesenia mentioned it, I think that we have a lack of information about the real teachers' needs. As you mentioned it before, we have a lot of information how students perceive teachers, how students perceive the practical decisions of the teachers. Everything is more related and centered about the students, but not about the teachers. And I think that nowadays it is important what is the reality of the classrooms? What are teachers facing nowadays? Because times change a lot. I remember that in the past, teachers were more able to be working in different form than nowadays. Nowadays, it's a little bit difficult to be a teacher, especially in public or private schools. If something happens, everything is the fault of the teachers. And then also parents have this misunderstanding or this misconception that the teachers are the second mothers of the students, which is not. So I think that this research is gonna be helpful for all of those teachers that want to improve their training, to improve their formation as an English teachers, and it's going to support these institutions that want to be the reality of the language use in their classes. So and also, it may support the development of teaching strategies and can promote like communication or language learning. So now, in this moment, I cannot tell you like a more complete answer as Yesenia and me because I'm pretty sure that they were working a lot in their research topic and they did really good and deep research in their topics. But I think that my answer would be that it can contribute in teaching strategies or to understand how teachers are perceiving the use of the language in their classes.
Okay, thanks, Marlene. Okay, well, we could keep talking for hours, but we are going to start wrapping up. So, any final advice or short reflection for those listening who are considering to enter into the master degree or doing research in the field of linguistics, Marlene?
Well, I think that something that we haven't mentioned before is that you have to be 100% sure of the steps that you want to do. If you want to do a master, do it, but you have to be aware that it's not gonna be an easy step. It's not gonna be an easy way because the easiest things are easy, and maybe you won't learn the things that now you are learning nowadays. And also, you have to try to have a balance between your personal life and the things that you have to do in the master. Sometimes it can be difficult, but you have to do the best as you can to have a balance in that part. And yes, that's my advice. Be aware that the things that you have to do and be sure that you want to do it. Because if not, it's gonna be kind of difficult for you because it's a long process. It's not easy. To do research is difficult and there is a lot of expectations that your teachers have from you and you have to raise them.
Thank you, Yesenia.
Okay, I'd say choose a topic that you're truly passionate about. I know you've heard this a lot of times. I heard this a lot, but that's really what makes you continue. You go back and you remember what was your first objective, what was your motivation. So you always have to go back to that and remember why you started in the first moment. This is what keeps you going because the process it's difficult. It's very, very difficult, but this is what makes you go throughout. So also, don't be afraid to adjust anything in your research because this is what research is about. This is how it evolves. It's a journey uh, of discovery, and you don't have anything. You don't have anything sure at the beginning. Nothing is certain. So always be prepared to learn. As we mentioned, we are all in this master's program because we are very good at what we do. And sometimes you start with that idea, but you always have to be open that you're going to continue learning because you are very good. But what comes in this master's program, it's huge. So you have to be able to understand that it's going to be a learning process and many things you didn't manage before you will. and the most important, to keep a balance between the academic and the professional life. I've always mentioned this. I am a student, but yes, I am also a friend. I am also a roommate. I am also a girlfriend. I am also a sister. I am also a daughter. And I'm also a teacher. So I have to be there for some students also. Sometimes they want to be listened to, and you are there for them. So yes, this is my advice.
Thanks, Yesenia. Daniel?
Well, I don't want to tell you something that you're going to be told all the time, but well, yes, like these pieces of advice are very useful. Choose the topic that you want, but also if you want to start studying something like that, read books. Read books before you start the masters. Find some good books about linguistics, about vocabulary, grammar, in teacher development before you start. That's gonna give you a very, very good preparation before you start this. And you can even ask ChatGPT, like, hey, can you give me some good books that I can read before starting the masters? So that's going to give you a very good preparation, and that's going to be very, very useful for that. That would be my piece of advice.
Thank you, Daniel. Now, what about you, Noemi?
I will say that applied linguistics it's more than just English teaching. There is always a topic that has been already been researched that we will find information about, but applied linguistics is also looking at it from a different perspective. Whenever you join this program, you need to know that if you want to look at a topic that has been always been there, like second language acquisition, Applied linguistics invites you to look at it from a different perspective, from the social context, from the psychological context. It has a lot of branches to look at it instead of just it's not about telling people how to learn English. It's about looking at the context. It's looking at the people that is learning English. It's looking at the people that is teaching English. It's looking at the politics. It's looking at the locations, even the facilities they might have. So when we see this program through the purposes of applied linguistics, we will see that there are a lot of things to discover. So have your mind opened.
Okay, thanks to all of you. And that brings us to the end of this episode of Linguabees. I hope that you enjoyed our conversation with Marlene, Yesenia, Daniel, and Noemi as much as I did. Remember that you can find our past episodes on Spotify and YouTube. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok to stay updated with our last news and episodes. Thanks for joining us. We will catch you in the next episode of Linguabees. Until then.